It is a great day to be alive, and I am so thankful for God, Jesus Christ, who lives in us. In today's video titled Philadelphia or the Philippines, I'm going to be giving an update to that particular video, and I'm going to be sharing 2 additional interpretations to that dream. And here is this original video and also the date that I had this dream on, January the 18th. And so the interpretation that I shared in this video still stands. I still do believe that this has something to do with China and Taiwan. But I see now that there's something more in addition to that. And what happened was last night, someone commented on this video. And they made mention about Philly and their thoughts about it. And also the what happened yesterday or last night in Philadelphia. And that is when it clicked. So going back to this Philadelphia or the Philippines dream, I never understood why Biden was in this dream. And I shared that in the video. I was trying to figure out what connection that Biden had with Philly. And now I understand. Again, this dream I had on January 18th, which meant that Biden was still the active president during that time. Biden represented Washington, D.C. Philly in this dream represented its own location. So although I was trying to understand, was his dream about Philly or Philadelphia, I think God wanted it to happen in that way, so that I'm seeing both Philadelphia and the Philippines. Again, my original interpretation of this dream as it connects to the Philippines and China and Taiwan, I do believe that all that still stands. But getting into these 2 new additional interpretations, if you've been following my channel for any amount of time, you know that market crashes and collapse and all those things I've talked about quite often as it relates to this coming wealth transfer. This new understanding that God has given me about this particular dream takes me back to a place where God really dealt with me years ago with dreams, revealing things about death and those close to me, which is never been my strong point, especially when it deals with me on a personal level. And so that is something for another video that is a very, very personal testimony that I will share on another time. When it comes down to this market crash timeline, I said that I see an extremely, extremely strong connection to Israel and to the war. And with war, you understand that death is going to occur, all these types of things. But with what God has revealed to me now about this dream and about crashes, it hits home differently. Again, it's just my history of dreams and things that God has been dealing with me about in the past. And so here we are just this week taking a look at what happened in Washington, D.C., which is what Biden represented in that dream, Washington, D.C. And then, of course, we have Philadelphia, which Philadelphia in that dream, trying to understand which one it was, represented its own location. In other words, God wasn't showing me death or the crash of these 2 incidences, but he was showing me locations of where it would take place. So that's the difference there between what I can say that how God, as far as the dreams in my past, that God has been showing me about death, very detailed, very specific, and then seeing it happen versus in this situation, not knowing that it was a crash, but it's about location. So I feel like God has really softened up on me in a sense. But again, that's for another video. So what I decided to do was say, okay, God, I'm going to now apply, if this is what you're showing me, I'm going to now apply what I've been using with the timeline, numbers, and the 4 keys of October, the Julian calendar, Hebrew calendar, everything that I shared in my very, very last video. I'm going to apply that here and to see how it works out. So because I had this dream on January the 18th, and I now realize that this dream has to do with both of these plane crashes that occurred just this week or last week, I first started with the keys for October, checking off what applies. And so I checked off the yellow and red because now I'm going to be doing a timeline to kind of scale and see if this is indeed connected to what God has been showing me as far as the previous timeline, dates, and connection with Israel war and all this. Does it really line up? And so I checked off yellow and red because that's what I'm going to be applying. I checked off crash because that has to do with both of these airplane incidences. And then I moved on to apply the Julian calendar. And I saw that January the 18th, the day that I had this dream, is the Julian date to the plane crash that happened in Philadelphia. So that was the first thing that stuck out to me. So, okay, Julian dates. So then I moved on to my diagram from my dream, and I applied the January 18th and January 31st events, which was the dream and then the second plane crash. And so both of those are marked as each one of the blue eggs. And then I brought over, of course, the yellow and red to complete the diagram, and that gives me a total of 180 days. So instead of working forward, I'm going to work backwards to see and to test and put all this together to see if it makes sense in any way. And so when I work backwards, I subtract 180 days from the time of this last plane crash, January 31st. Moving 180 days backwards brings me to August the 4th. Now, why is August the 4th significant? So now that I've used the Julian calendar to see the connections between January 18th and January 31st, I'm going to now use the Hebrew calendar, and I'm looking at same day, different number. So I have August 2024 calendar, and if you look at August 2024, the 4th is on a Sunday. If I find that same date on the Hebrew calendar that is also on a Sunday, it gives us the date of the 6th, August the 6th. August the 6th, using this Hebrew calendar, is a fourth quarter date, and that is connecting to the date of the Japan market crash. And so with the Japan market crash, using those 4 keys, we can check off yellow and red. We can check off the fact that there was a crash. But we can also check off it's a leading indicator. It's a leading indicator to what? It is a leading indicator to, again, January 31st, whose Julian date is January the 18th, 2025. And that dream is depicting both crashes. So now in my thinking, I'm putting all 3 of these interpretations together. What I know about China, what I understand now about these two, this dream depicting these 2 crashes, the location where they're going to occur. My question is, are these 2 plane crashes depicting a timeline of how close we are to possibly seeing something occur with China and Taiwan? Based on the order of the dream of how I recognize things. Biden caught my eye, followed by Philadelphia or Philippine, and then my understanding once waking up is that this has something to do with China and Taiwan. And so, again, the order of that dream represented the order of how these things unfortunately transpired last week, with Washington first, then Philly, and then now should we be expecting something with China and Taiwan? So let's continue to keep these families in prayer. Again, this is very sensitive to me because now that I realize what God was showing me in a very sensitive way, because he knows how I am and my history, where I've come from with dreaming about death and family and different things. This is just one of those things that has kind of put me in a setback position. And so as much as I see this connecting to the market crash timeline and the way God has these things set up in order for me to understand these numbers and dates and stuff, it's still a very touchy subject for me now that I know. So let's keep those families in prayer. There are some things that we just will never understand why, and we question God why. But at the end of the day, we have to still understand that God is still in control, that he has a plan and a purpose for all things. Let's continue to pray for our nation, for our leaders, for those in authority over us. And let's continue to pray for one another. So much is happening so fast that things can change right before your eyes. And so with this time, let's use it to, one, glorify God, to remember what God has done for us, to be thankful, to be grateful, not take small things for granted, but in all things to give God thanks. That is all that I have for this video. Until the next one, God bless.